It's official.
Thank you. So who has a question, a burning portfolio question for me?
I can't believe Hannah doesn't have a question. I'm going to be honest.
I know. What is up with our Hannah?
I speak for the class. I speak for the class. I'm Sandy, I will own this as my own ignorance. So, I had made the assumption that the papers that were due for the portfolio were the ones that we were writing for each class that were sort of, for the objective. So that was my own ignorance. So last Wednesday when you said, well, you submit those, but also write another piece. I think it was the other piece was completely new to me.
Okay.
I own my ignorance. So
No, don't worry. There's a lot of people who ask the same question. Now, today I sent you an email, and in that email was program outcome 6. It was an essay with the evidence attached to it and the rubric. So you could see this is an essay that someone actually submitted. Here's the essay that was written about the program outcome, and then the artifacts attached. What you're doing is you're going to write an essay that connects to the elements of that program outcome. If you look on the rubric, it breaks down what we're looking for. The reviewers grade to that rubric. I've taken them all. We have different groups of reviewers for each outcome. And I brought them together and we all graded one to make sure we all graded the same. And it created some consistency in how they're graded. Because before, when Eric did it, we had some people who were tougher graders than others. And I wanted to get rid of that so we could get consistency. So I brought together a group of reviewers. They look at that rubric and they're looking for the pieces. If you read the rubric and you read the pieces, when that reviewer looked at that essay, this is how they scored that rubric. So you literally see a whole little experience for one program outcome. Every program outcome has an essay that says, here's what I know about this program outcome. And the rubric directs you to the pieces to write about. It says, here's the pieces. This is all the stuff you got to work on. If you read the descriptions on the left-hand side where it says mastery in each of the columns, that's the precise area they're looking for. So if you were to create for each of those pieces precisely what they talk about in the mastery column, you're going to do remarkably well. You will pass if you get mastery or proficient as an average score on any program outcome. If you get developing or beginning as an average score, you have to repeat it. So I'm going to stop there for a minute. Does that make sense to everybody?
And Sandy, I just, to clarify, thank you for sending this email. I'm sorry, I didn't see it earlier. So the individual, whoever their name was, wrote a 2-page essay about how they reached that objective. And then they had just attached to that same document the original paper or whatever they submitted. Okay.
They attach the evidence. And in the case of program outcome 6, you must attach something from a first paper you wrote. And you're not going to correct it. We want it to be raw and we want it to be really imperfect. Okay. And the reason is because you're going to see that piece of paper. Now the next one is going to be a paper of your choice from 660 or 620. And you're going to put that in there. Now what you're doing is allowing the reviewer to compare where you began and where you are now. And that's the first part of that rubric. If you look at that rubric, it talks about a comparison of your work. That's what we're trying to do, is allow you to show. You don't correct any of your evidence. You simply put it in. It's already graded. The only thing a reviewer is grading is that essay. That one essay that you wrote using the rubric to connect the dots. Does that make sense?
Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Should I assume, Hannah, that nobody else does because you're covering them all? I'm just,
I referred back to Sal or Kay or Elise or Johanna, but my corner has spoken.
your corner is, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? I just want you to, all you got to do right now is start putting things in that portfolio folder. But every course, I'm going to come in and I'm going to give you more information. But what you saw, first of all, is you can see that rubric was really high. So S4N, which is the way I code things, a letter, a number, a letter. Nobody knows who you are. It's to create anonymity. Even in that, you can see that this reviewer saw precisely what they were looking for. They thought that maybe, you know, the grammar and the ideas, there were a couple of problems there, but they still, this person got mastery, more towards mastery than proficient. You'll also notice this particular reviewer saw no reason to give any feedback. The higher the scores, the less likely people are to give you a lot of feedback. If you don't do as well, they give you a lot of feedback so you know what to change. What's the worst that happens to you? You don't pass. On the average, 2 or 3 people in a group will not pass. Not pass 1 or 2. It's not like they don't pass any. So you'll find that there's some that you just feel more confident about than others. In another term, you're going to write, you know, like in term 3, you're going to write your first portfolio outcome, and you're going to send it to me with the evidence. I'm going to score it based on a rubric. It's not guaranteeing you anything, but it gives you a heads up where you stand.
Now, Sandy, does that come, like, are you gonna pop in another class and be like, this is due, like, this is when you're like,
Yes.
Okay, timeline's throwing me off a little bit, because I grab, like, I don't wanna wait on things.
No, and you, right now, the best and most important thing you can do is anything that was from last term that you're going to use has to get out of Blackboard. In September, you can't access Blackboard. Lisa Manley, nobody at Goodwin can access anything from Blackboard. So you are honor bound to get your first paper, which is what is leadership, and then also your leadership development action plan, to take both of those out, make sure. I don't know how you cannot save things in your computer, because you'd be told you can't upload it unless you saved it somewhere. I want to make sure you have it. This is also a good reason to start using Academic Writer. You have things in Academic Writer, it doesn't matter. You could crash your computer, it's going to still stay.
Sandy,
Yes.
so my 2 cents are, I know folks are worried about the timeline.
Mhm.
Yet to see somebody not pass with proficiency that did not do it the night or 2 before it was due. So the longer you wait, the harder it gets.
Right. The people who, like I said to you, in the 3rd term, I'm coming back in and I'm going to demand you write 1 for me. Okay. So remember, you have the 3rd term and the 4th term. In your case, You are not going to have to submit these until April of 2022. You have 6 essays to write by April of 2022. You have plenty of time. My coming in every course is to make sure you're growing comfortable with the ideas, that you're looking at things. You're going to have to, Eric's right, you can't write this the last nights. You're going to have to do, the most important thing is start to write something. Start to write it. But for right now, the only thing I want you to do is to grab that paper from your Badir assignment. That goes into your portfolio folder. The other thing I want you to do is to put into that folder what is leadership, the first thing you wrote when you came to this program, and your leadership development action plan. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, if there's any other questions you have, like I said, I'm going to put up a video that answers the questions I've received. And I don't have that many questions. That kind of makes me a little nervous. On one hand, I think it's that people are uncomfortable about this, but don't know what they're uncomfortable about. And the second thing is that they're waiting for clarity. So if you have questions, I will answer them in a video on Sunday. Now I have Hannah's question, but is there anything else? No?
Sandy, when do you need questions by in order for you to answer them on Sunday?
Well, if you give them to me by, if you put them in Saturday night, because I'm going to check my email and stuff Sunday morning, and I'm going to record it in the afternoon. So,
Okay.
but nothing, no question is too small. No question is too large. But I want to urge you, one habit you need to really get into. I send you things, look at them. I send you an essay and a rubric, look at it, because that's what you're going to do. If I send you anything, I sent you all the rubrics and a discussion of the process that was sent to you in the last class. If you don't have that, tell me, and then I'll send it again. But don't hesitate. Don't wait. No, I'm never going to think you're not doing your work or something. Hi, Stephen. Make sure, hi, Anand. I didn't say hello to Anand before I launched into Portfolio RS. So please make sure, Stephen, when you watch the recording, you'll see that I am doing a video about Portfolio. I'm doing it on Sunday. If you have any questions about Portfolio, just send them to me privately, and then I will make sure to record the answer to it. The other thing I want to remind you is this is not that high stakes. If you don't pass any of these, whichever one it might be, and to date, all students have passed 4 of 6. At worst, there's been 2 that they've had to repeat. If you have to repeat, you repeat it with me. I take the feedback from the reviewer. I take your particular essay and the evidence. I look at it with you. We go through line by line, and then I send you back to work on it. Tell you where to focus. And then you come back and you send me the essay again, and then I rescore it. Usually people the second time around, that's it. I've had a couple people who have had to still make some tweaks, but the point is it didn't hold them up from graduation. It isn't anything that is more challenging than that. So it's overall low stakes. It's very important to do it. But if you work with me, you will still graduate. Okay? So this isn't going to hold you back. But don't wait until 2 days before, because you won't pass. And then you're stuck with something else to do the last term you're here, and you don't want that. Okay?
Andy, are you accepting videos, or is it just written now?
Yes, no, we do accept videos. And if somebody wants to look at a video, I can get that to you as well. So I can try and get that together for Sunday. Oh, 6 P06. All right. Excellent question, Eric. See, even after he's passed all of them, he's still, and ask Eric. Eric was one of the few that had almost flawless program outcomes. Ask him. Let Okay. I didn't hire him just because he's a jovial, good guy. Okay. Is there anything else that I can provide you guys? All right. If anybody needs to talk to me privately, you can send me a text and I'll respond. But Sunday, I'm going to do that video. Okay. All right, Eric, I guess I'm turning them back over to you.
Cool. All right, thanks, Ann.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Sandy.
Okay. Seriously, this is not, portfolios are not a, they're not as bad as they might sound, because what you're writing is basically the length of a couple of discussion boards. You know, it's like 750 words, and it's just capturing how you know what you're talking about. Every week that we sit in your class, or that you guys email me or text, I know you know what you're talking about. You tell me, everybody in here has told me what beta means, you know, or they understand it. That's really all you have to do for this particular one. But then there's other ones that are much more clean, clean cut, where you can pick any assignment during the mod and submit it. It's just that this portfolio aligns with a measuring mechanism called beta. So we kind of teach around that. Okay, let's start out with last week's discussion board. Who wants to give it a go? We're all under the, I guess, most of us think that humans make good decisions, but it's not something that comes naturally. So who wants to pick it up from there?
As far as decision-making is going, regardless if it's a good decision or bad decision, you're gonna need data no matter what. That's my point of view.
Right.
And whether or not it's gonna bite you in the butt in the end too.
Well, there's also a point where you can have too much information going in, and it really.
Well, I feel there should be like a happy medium.
Well, there is, but let's say that, you hear the overthinkers, the people that just.
Yeah, you want to take that one?
I'm not an overthinker. Depends on my decision, Sal, I should say.
Well, if you think about like this is a stupid example, but like the Cheesecake Factory menu, I always joke around about that because it's like a novel. So if you go into the Cheesecake Factory and you're like, oh, I figure out what I want to eat, you have so many options in front of you that it makes it that much harder to actually make a choice.
That's a good example, Maria. Have you ever watched one of Ramsey's shows, like where he goes in and guts out a restaurant and puts, I can't think of the name of the
Rescue?
it's like that one, but it's with Gordon Ramsay. Is it Kitchen?
Hell's Kitchen?
No, Hell's Kitchen is the one where they go to him. I think it's Kitchen Nightmares, maybe. But anyway, the first thing he does, he's like, you don't need all these choices, you know, they want to try to serve everybody, but you know, you really only need like a limited number of items on your menu. You don't have to, you know, your food costs go up, that there's really no benefit to having a large menu. Cheesecake Factory, I mean, they're loaded. They've got, you know, they've got the ordering's all done, automated. It's like our Wendy's and Augie Ray's analogy. These big companies can afford a bigger menu because they can just go on their computer at night, at the end of the night, and say, okay, we sold X amount of, you know, this today, and it'll be in their refrigerator the next day. Where not everybody can afford to do that, but you're right, less is sometimes more, and to the over analysis going into it kind of screws up with our, you know, emotional aspect of making a decision. So, and really that was the consensus. I don't know if everybody read everybody's, but it was pretty similar along the way. Who else?
I just said, I mean, emotion was the big piece, and I said it can be, it can enhance the decision-making, or it also can impact it negatively as well. And I think, watching that video that was included in there, I think humans are most effective when they, and kind of, I think what Sal was saying, like the happy medium piece, where they combine the efforts with something like AI, and you can kind of balance that emotional and like you said, overload, like it gives that balance there of kind of both. And I think that's when the most effective decision can be made. I don't think on their own, they don't have enough capacity to have all the information, and then there's the emotion piece. So I guess using other resources makes them more effective.
Yeah, so either way, either if it's all AI, it's probably going to be flawed, and if it's all human, it's probably going to be flawed. So there's got to be a compromise there in the middle, but. Anybody else want to chime in on our discussion board? My phone is plugged in tonight, so we won't lose, I mean, my computer's plugged in, we won't lose everybody. Getting you a better seat.
I'm just gonna say one of the things also that Rebecca had put in hers, I know she's not in class today, so I'll just throw hers out there as well, is just about the fact that decisions are very personal too. So like a decision that I would want to make about my job or my house or something like that may be totally different than what somebody else wants to make. So part of the data and part of what you're sort of doing is also trying to figure out the information that's relevant for you, not just a more of a generalization.
So is it kind of like your own personal beta, or as Sandy says, a badir, where you're just processing everything to support your own hypothesis, and if it doesn't work, you move on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. And yeah, my beta process would look very different probably than someone else's when they're making a decision, a big decision that's sort of high risk for them.
All right, more comments on our week 5. They don't call it week in Canvas, but when we download our PowerPoints, everything gets jumbled up. They get reformatted in Canvas. So before we jump into Unit 6, I want to talk about our Tavana paper this week, one that we have. Anybody have any questions or comments on that? Again, we're looking at it from the other side, and we're looking at it from Tavana's side.
Actually, I had one question for you that probably is pointless now that I've already written the paper, but when you brought up naming people like Howard Schultz or Andrew Mack, you had said obviously don't call them by their first name, but do you typically just do the last name if you're referring to them after that, or do you say like Mr. Schultz or
Sergeant Schultz? I'm just kidding. I dated myself with that reference. That's Hogan's Heroes, but no, so the rule of thumb is in APA, when you first, and this goes with acronyms too, and I put it in some of the notes in the papers. So anytime you introduce an acronym for the first time, you spell the whole thing out, and then you put the acronym immediately after it, or the initialism, whichever the case may be. And then when you're first introduce a person like Howard Schultz, full name and title, And then following that, the rest of the paper, it's just Schultz. Now, if there's two Schultz, like there were two Macs, you can refer to it first initial, last name. But we typically don't refer to both parties. You know, we'll do the Macs plural usually because it was much more of a joint operation. But talking about like, it sounds so informal, like it just sounds almost like rude, just saying Schultz but that's the same thing, like this APA is just very like, I don't know, impersonal, where it doesn't really seem like you would want to sit down by a cozy fire and read something in APA because it's just so clinical. And so going by straight last name after the first introduction is exactly what you need to do. Any other questions? What do you guys think of Tivana's? What was the big issue with Tivana? What was so different about them and the coffee magnets?
I mean, they didn't have the same foothold in just the beverage space that Starbucks had. So they had a lot more to lose.
They did. And they didn't have the same philosophy, really, outside of making money. That their philosophies were pretty much polar opposite, where they did want to grow. They wanted to do it in ways in which they could mimic, the Asian and European tea houses, where Starbucks just wanted to start slamming people into malls and say, here, just go there, have your tea.
I think it was the lack of knowledge.
Yeah. But
I think that was a buzzkill.
but why was there a lack of knowledge?
I read somewhere, I forgot parts of it, but it was more like not proper training, not knowing what you had for a product. And you can't, like I said, I think I said it like a week or so ago. And one of my papers said, you can't force somebody to drink coffee or, sell tea or whatever.
Yeah.
When it's dominated by coffee, yuppie kids that like coffee, that's like the trend.
Right. Right. Some hipster's not going to go in and buy a hot cup of tea because the Mac said it's the greatest thing to do and it's calming. They don't care. They just want to get jacked up on caffeine and sit down there and get on their, their MacBooks. That's a sweeping generalization, but that's typically what Starbucks is attracting. They want to have people hang out, but not long enough. Where the Macs wanted you to go in there, sit down, and make a morning of it. So culturally, very different. They neglected a lot of things when they were doing their research to know their product as good as they said they did. I mean, they knew their coffee side pretty well, but then some people even question that because do they know it well, or do they just have enough money to cover that they knew it well? I mean, money will cover up for a lot of mistakes. So, and they threw money on top of money on this, and it really was something that the Macs, where the image that always kind of strikes in my head is that the Macs were just this nice little husband and wife tandem that, pursued their dream. But darn well, when somebody dangles $620 million.
I was just gonna say, and it's 2012, so it's not even like, oh, back in the day, they didn't know what a big conglomerate could do.
Exactly.
They saw millions of dollars, and like with the share, like I took it from the perspective, like it was a great choice. You knew what you were getting into.
Yep.
And the amount of shares the two of them had, they made like over 330 million themselves.
Right.
So
Their
like,
kids will never have to worry
you were
about it.
selling it. You weren't going into partnership with Starbucks. You sold your company. So you knew that risk factor too. So I'm sure they're lovely people, but I don't feel like, I don't feel so bad. Like they can't be naive.
Exactly.
And I kept thinking, right, so I had this vision in my mind, like, right, because they started on a road trip and like they were like super crunchy and they were earthy and like they were outside and they're like, I don't know, flowing great gowns. Like I had this vision, right? And then when I Googled him, I was like, well, he's not what I thought he was gonna look like. But I also, to sort of echo Kate's point too, is that, so the Macs had this vision of what they wanted, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't put it in roadside stands, in little cool, like, earthy towns. They put them in big malls, right? So as soon as they started to do that, they clearly wanted to make money, right? So they didn't say to Starbucks, like, oh, we're not really successful in our mall experience. You should move us now to this earthy roadside. They were like, sure, buy us and we're okay. And we're just gonna make a ton of money. And maybe now they're traveling the roadside in their flowery gowns. I don't know, like, but this was, it sort of kept going back to that, what I thought they were going to do and what they really did and who they became, so.
Well, and like some of Schultz's promises were like loyalty companies, like, or loyalty stuff, like it was just shadowing some of the Starbucks stuff anyway. So if they thought it was gonna take on some special little feel, when you're really just
No.
copying what they did in tea form.
Yeah.
then,
Right. And they had the money to do it.
Yeah.
So much money.
And the max, I mean, from a retail perspective, as we've seen in our week 3 paper, we knew what the trend was mall traffic. We knew that it was tanking. So it was a matter of time for them. They didn't have pockets deep enough to sustain the rent that would be increased in the retail play, in the malls. So, they probably saw a little bit more of the writing on the wall than Schultz and Company did, but they still were perpetuating a culture of sitting here. They wanted to make it a destination store in the mall, where Starbucks wanted to make it a stop and drop. Just go get your stuff and get out, go to Sears now, get your stuff. So it's really, I mean, I like this part of this particular paper during the class because we go from typically looking at, poor little old Max, they really had a dream and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. You really knew what you were doing. And it's kind of like buying the car from the little old lady that only drives it to the supermarket on Sundays. And you find out that she clocked the odometer back like 50,000 miles and, it's shot, the engine's ready to blow, but she looks really nice. And she, aesthetically, she's that real nice, go to church on Sunday, drop your car off. So anyway, this particular week is a good paper for us to look at because it gives us kind of both sides of the story. And the old saying, right? There's 3 sides to every story. You got side A, side B, then the truth is somewhere in the middle. And the Macs have a lot of money, but they're not going to control the media like Starbucks is. So the narrative's always going to spin Starbucks favorably to say, yeah, they really grew. They modified the tea industry, and they've kind of streamlined it. So they'll spin it the way they want to spin it. But bottom line, they don't sell as much tea as they do coffee. And they really, at this point, if you would have asked Schultz 10 years ago, like, what do you see this in 10 years? He would have seen as many people in this country drinking coffee as tea as coffee. He really saw it like kind of, I'm going to kind of dictate what people drink. So, but it's a good paper to kind of get that other perspective on. Any other questions, comments? All right, again, before we jump into Unit 6, I want to talk about your finals. Everybody that submitted your final, throw them out and start over. No, I'm just kidding. They were all awesome. Everybody, you get it. There's,
I was like, I'm out. This is
I
it.
agreed with you.
they really, your teams are all on the right page. So now it doesn't mean you put it in cruise control, because the hardest part of the final is presenting it. Because if you sit there and read to me, I'm gone. I'm totally zoning out, and that's a good chunk of your grade. So you want to make sure you know what you're talking about. The content that you have, just about everybody that's submitted, well, everybody submitted, but I'm saying the content that's in there, you probably have enough content to present right now. There's some things I mentioned that you might want to look at and grab, make sure you got a reference page on there, stuff like that. But your content is strong. Your arguments are strong. You follow the outline. You got your recommendations are solid. So the presentation wise, you're obviously going to clean those things up. You're going to, format them so they'll transition. We got to figure out if your team's going to present remotely, if your team's going to present on ground. So we'll have to schedule that and figure that out, because it's tough to do if 2 are here and 1 is on remote, or if 1 is remote or 2 remote, 1's here. It's tough to stage that. It gets a little choppy because you're relying on technology to deliver a third of your presentation. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we can just isolate you. We can basically highlight you guys on your, on Zoom, and just the three of you will be on the screen.
Yeah.
So,
You
yeah,
can pull people up on that big board and then.
I can, but I can't. So that's my school login,
Oh,
and I'm on my Zoom account here.
Gotcha.
So I'd have to shut off Zoom to pull it up on there. So, yeah, so it's kind of, I mean, I can try to find, I can
no,
use,
I just noticed a little camera thing up there, so I just wasn't sure.
yeah, because when, I think we had it on 1 week, like I put it up on 1 week when I didn't have, I think I just assumed everybody, it might have been the week,
First week, was it the first week?
I think there was just you guys here, right? There was just 2 people here.
Yeah.
Good old days.
Seriously, do you know we're presenting our finals next week?
Yeah.
The 23rd. How fast did that go by?
Very.
All right, so you had a question?
Yeah, I just have a question. So do you need to know if we're presenting in person or remote or?
Yeah, just from a scheduling standpoint. So coordinate with your team, either all here or you're all on the screen. So that's really,
So Maria loves data so much. It's her
Yeah.
're #1 passion, but she's gonna come from Maine to present with us. So
but,
Maria is,
but what if it snows? Are you still gonna,
It's like 90 degrees up here. Be prepared, Connecticut, because I'm coming at you.
coming. She's coming for us.
nice.
Very
So-
excited.
We'll talk, I mean, throughout the, throughout the week, we can talk about it if you want to coordinate it. I mean, obviously Rebecca's in Iowa. So
Maybe I'm paying for a ticket, you know?
I was like, maybe Sal.
I know she wants to come for graduation.
Sal's trying to one up you, Maria.
Okay. If Rebecca can come, that would be so fun too. I don't know if flights from Iowa are as easy as drives from Maine, but who knows?
I think Sal actually volunteered to go to Iowa and present in the same room.
There you go.
I'm not going back.
But, so just remember, you're gonna have a lot of material on your screen. A good PowerPoint presentation when you're presenting data, some of the things we talked about last week, don't boggle down with charts. Keep them really simple. Transition your slides so you're both, or your partners are all talking kind of in sync versus, you looking over and say, okay, you're gonna take this. And then, you just read off a chart of, just rehearse this stuff, practice this stuff, know this stuff. The more off the cuff that you do, the better prepared you are. And the whole point of this class, as much as you hate Starbucks and Tivana right now, is to prepare you how to present a situation like a case study to a group of peers slash, I think this situation, we look at it as you're presenting to a board, but these are things that you want to keep your parties engaged. You want to keep your audience kind of aware and understanding. You don't want to, start going on these data rants about, this algorithm does that. You just want to really keep it simple, to the point, answer your questions, and make sure everybody understands it. And again, if you have a screen that has, 2 paragraphs on it, I know one team put the mission on, and that's great. We want to know the mission, but the mission you really shouldn't paraphrase, but you can read off the mission. But the next slide is, the history of the Macs. We don't want to read, born in 1932, and we don't care about that. You want to just come off the cuff like you know what you're talking about. You're presenting to investors slash board members slash colleagues. So what do you guys have for questions on your final?
If our group is going to be doing it remotely, is there a way that you would want us to do like the share screen business to be presenting, or?
So I can spotlight it, but
is that-
so which means I can pick like the 3 people that are on there and just highlight them, and they would then, but I would have everybody And so basically everybody in the class is gonna have the ability to share their screen. And you would then be able to pull something up if you know, for your presentation, but the other two people in your group wouldn't have to pull it up. So they can go off the one, like the one person,
Okay,
because they're watching the same thing we are, so you don't have, it would be very convoluted if everybody pulled up their PowerPoint,
yeah.
you know, and at least you're on slide 1, but yet I'm on
Share.
slide 2. So, yeah, the one person, usually the captain, puts it up on the screen, and the other two will follow up and just kind of comment and just work on your synchronization and work on your transitions. That's really, it's not super hard. It's just, you want to make sure that you each know what you're going to talk about, because it can get ugly. If a couple of classes ago, I had a student that totally wigged out on his teammate and said, like during the presentation, say, wait a minute, that's the wrong chart. You put the wrong chart in there, just like that. So I'm like, time out. They go, the only person that knows the wrong chart is in there is you. So just you have to play these things off. Like, so if you guys have this gaffe, keep going. Like, I might know from looking at your template, but nobody else will. So that's the way it works in the real world. We're not, we just don't sit there and start hammering on a teammate because you're going to try to get a couple extra points because you know you had it right, but your teammate's the one that screwed it up on the software side. It never works out that way. And it threw the rest of the presentation off because, then you get two people on edge with each other and the third person's like, well, great, my grade's affected because these two clowns are fighting. So, anyway, just, I'll have to separate you guys. But there's, it's really a kind of a culmination. Every paper you've done up to this is going to contribute to this paper. So it's not like you're just looking at it for the first time. And you do get to state your opinion at the end. And I guarantee you, as weird as it sounds, there's probably going to be at least three different viewpoints as to, what was right, wrong, or indifference. I mean, it's interesting because as your slides are looking right now, you're identifying a lot of similar things. Again, we're not like, we don't have a million different data points to pull from. We're going off of a case study. But there were a lot of things that we know that we've recognized in the last, month and a half that didn't happen. And those are the things that we're going to kind of highlight and make our recommendations on. So good stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Probably not as much as you guys are looking forward to it, but I'm looking forward to it. Any questions on that? Four groups. So one other thing about the Enneagram extra credit, I don't know if everybody's seen it, anybody's seen it, but
What did you say it was again?
it's in week 6, or I'm sorry, what do we call them? Module 6, like I'm like Space Commander. Module 6, and it's should be in the second discussion, should be underneath the first discussion.
I'm gonna tell you, I don't see it on.
I just saw it though. I literally just saw it when he told us that it was here.
I'll pull it up on mine after we go through the slideshow.
It literally was here.
So basically, it's 5 points added to any grade. That's your final, but any grade like that we've done so far. And it's to basically talk about how your Enneagram has been used by you professionally in the workplace. Like, have you noticed that, like I put an example in there that I have a hard time working with 7s because they're all over the place. Because I'm a 1, so I have my clipboard with me all the time. Piece of trivia, by the way. So President Scheinberg calls me coach, right? It has nothing to do with athletics. It's because I'm always walking around with a clipboard, and he just coined it one day. So, and it stuck. But so I will double check. Because I put it up earlier this afternoon. Can you find it?
No,
It's there, but it's in, you know how there's like on the side, the things that you've updated?
Yes.
It'll show up in that little pin. It shows up there, but it doesn't show up under the module.
So it's under regular discussion?
It's, if you click
It's
on
on the board, right, Elise? Is that what you're saying?
it's on the
and
to-do
then
list.
it says to do.
It's on the to-do list on the right.
Yeah, but it's not under the
Okay.
module.
Because I put it under today's to-do list.
That's right, because it said, remember I said to you,
Yeah,
it
you
says
asked me if
due,
it's
it's
due
due
today.
today at midnight, and I was like, Eric, that's a little stressful.
It's 300 words. Just a kind of just your observation of how you've recognized your Enneagram style. Since you've found it, have you noticed anything different in the workplace? Have you went up to somebody and said, you need to get tested because I think you're a 1, stuff like that, where you will really want to try to get like a feel for how you fit in with others based on their Enneagram styles. So that is, this thing has like a 30-second shelf life on it for it. That's really the, it's not a biggie. And again, it's 5 points to a paper. Okay. Tonight I want to do an exercise back on our wine store, but I want to talk about KPIs, key performance indicators. I want to talk about a balanced scorecard, which I want to bring up because previously, before we went with Mars book, there was a book that we spent 2 weeks on the balanced scorecard. And I think it's like the most overrated tracking document you can find. But we're going to look at objectives and key results. So OKRs. So OKRs are broken up into 2 pieces. You got your objectives and you got your key results. So it's like just always look at it as like an O/KR. But anyway, I want to go over those things tonight. I want to talk about those in the context of our wine store that we worked on a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago. So we can kind of put it in perspective. We're going to do some exercises, figuring out how to identify some KPIs for what we're looking to accomplish in our store. So kind of you can make it into somewhat of a common perspective for what you would use it for. So let's look at, these are some redundancies here. We seem to talk about every week, but our data is always going to help us do 3 things. It's going to help us improve our operations, make us a much more efficient operation. We talked about, again, going back to our wine store. It's going to help us improve our decisions, and it's going to help us make money. Not necessarily as treating data as an asset, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. We're not looking to sell it at this point. Today, we're talking about how we can contain that data and use it to make better decisions. By making better decisions, we run leaner. By running leaner, we save money. So that gets us into how we're going to create a strategic plan using data. Anybody worked with a strategic plan before? Right? So are they static or is it a living plan? Anybody? Like, what have you worked with? Okay, so, but is that static for 3 years? Like once you
No, it's not.
So everybody know what the difference is between a static and a living plan? Like a lot of organizations would put together a plan. They'd assemble a group. Okay, let's get a strategic plan going. And in 5 years, usually they're a 5-year window, they'll go up and blow the dust off it, sitting on the top shelf of somebody's bookcase in an operations office. They'll take it out and say, okay, we did that, we didn't do that, we did that. And most of the things they got done were by luck. Because a strategic plan is something that you should really have I mean, seriously, I have ours on my desktop where I can access it every day. Because things, you can add to it, you can modify it. Anybody that had a strategic plan that they built in 2019, that was a static plan, do you think it's still effective? What happened last year? Anybody see a global pandemic coming? No. But if you can adjust your plan on the fly and you're able to make these modifications for the future, you can work with predictive modeling where you can omit that particular segment, that particular year. We know, foot traffic was off at our wine store because people are leaving their house. So things like that. Our strategic plan is the one piece that, and I do believe you guys are going to get me in 650 for a strategy. Unless Sandy can find somebody else to teach it, because I'm filling in for her teacher next week, right? So you guys finish up on Wednesday. No, I'm sorry, you finish up on the 30th. Mod ends on the 30th. So, so on the 30th, are you in your other class now?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're going to performance management in 2 weeks. So anyway, talking about what we want, how we're going to build our strategic plan based on the data that we're going to collect. What does KPI stand for again? Nobody in here can tell me because it's on the board.
Key performance indicator.
Thank you, Maria. What are OKRs? OKRs? Objectives, key results. Objectives, key results. All right. These are the items we're going to use to build our plan. Skip one. Okay. Some terminology you're going to want to get more familiar with. We talked about our data strategy, right? And we talked about that, gosh, we talked about week 1, but when we build a strategy, how we're going to incorporate that into our strategic plan. So we got the difference, right? So we have a data strategy that we're going to build, and then we're going to tie that in with our strategic plan, because a lot of strategic plans, well, I mean, I can't give you a scientific number, but the majority of strategic plans will not house data strategy. And why is that? Let me take a guess. Go back to our place. Augie and Ray's.
Enough staff.
Right, they don't have the resources. So they're collecting data, but they don't really feel that they can, either that it's robust enough or that they have the infrastructure to support it. Now, within their strategic plan, they can always look to incorporate for maybe year 2 or year 3, collecting data. But as they put their plan together, they can't incorporate a data strategy until they've actually collected data. And many companies and organizations don't collect data because they don't have the infrastructure, the resources to do it. So that's one of the things when we're putting our data strategy together, we're looking to make sure that it's our data that we're collecting, that's good for us. We don't care what our competitors are doing. It's the data that we want, and it aligns with our goals, it aligns with our missions. And it's going to be how we see ourselves. Again, this is the data strategy, how we see ourselves growing our organization through the use of data, right? Then we merge that in and we put it in, should fit hand in glove with our strategic plan, which at that point we can now develop a 5-year kind of a living document in which we can modify on the fly. Should we have to, God forbid we have another pandemic or something where the economy completely shuts down, then we can make those adjustments. But if it's a static plan, we can't do that. We don't have the resources to do that. I want to show you basic scorecard. I'm going to turn you guys around. I'm not going to see your lovely classmates any longer. And you look at a basic scorecard. So a basic scorecard, I'm sorry, a balanced scorecard. You're going to look at 4 aspects, okay? You're going to look at your financial, your customer aspect, the internal process, and learning. Okay, so it's broken down. Your strategic objectives, your performance indicators, so your KPIs, you drop in there, your targets, where you want to be, okay, and your initiatives. So this right here, when you're putting together a balanced scorecard, it's for next year. Okay, we're going to create this document. We're going to build these pieces for a year out. Okay. Now, when we're putting our objectives and key results, our OKRs, how far are we looking at with our OKRs? Somebody give me a guess. How far out with your OKRs, our objective and key results? What kind of window do we need to operate with those? I'm sorry, somebody said something, I cut them off.
Year,
What'd you say, Cynthia?
a year,
Oh, a year.
a year.
Not, so you can go up to a year with an OKR, but you're typically looking at next quarter. Okay, so that's usually a quarter out. So the balanced scorecard, that's a year out. Your OKRs, that's a quarter out. Because you can really modify those things on the fly. You can look at objectives and key results. For example, if we went back to last April, we could pull up our OKRs and say, we really got to make a shift because we know now that our campus is going to be closed indefinitely. And we're going to have to look at some different targets for which some goals which we can achieve, because obviously those goals were a lot different 4 or 5 weeks earlier. So when we first started, hearing about COVID in maybe late February, like, yeah, okay, whatever, we're good. So we're not going to make any adjustments to our OKRs. Then we start seeing things happen. And the other piece that really kind of factors into it that you have to consider is that when we started making these adjustments to our OKRs organizationally here, we're pushing into the end of a fiscal year. So we have to make some pretty risky adjustments. And when you do that, there's an acronym, like kind of a crude acronym, but it's like, they call it BHAGs. Everybody know what a BHAG is? BHAG. It's like an acronym, BHAG. BHAG is big, hairy, audacious goals. So when an organization is putting these kind of, we're really going to do this. So I can say, we were looking at Bridgeport, University of Bridgeport. That for us was like a BHAG. So we really had to do is to look at how that was going to fit within not only the mission, the culture, I mean, layers on top of layers of how the internal process was going to shift from an academic institution to a career-focused institution, how those two align, how the customers, is it the same customer? University of Bridgeport's an 18 to 24-year-old demo where we're median age of 28. The financials, how they were operating financially versus how we were operating financially. So we really had to build a balanced scorecard looking at the next year, even though a lot of the things that were going to happen quicker. So it's again, OKRs, a quarter out. When you're doing something pretty sizable, you want to do a balanced scorecard for the year out for your next budget. And your KPIs, when you want to look at a KPI? I hear crickets in the background. That's not good.
That be kind of like an immediate or more?
Immediate. Excellent. Immediate. KPIs, you can flip up on a second and say, whoa, we missed that one. We definitely missed that one. Let's take a look at this one. So if we, let's take, for example, last weekend, Memorial Day weekend, right? Everybody remember what it was doing Memorial Day weekend? Okay. Six Flags New England banked on having their biggest day in a year and a half. Right? What happened?
Rained.
Rained. Nobody showed up.
And cold.
It was cold. A lot of the rides were down. So they immediately looked at their KPIs of what they anticipated, and they adjusted those because that affected their first quarter. That was going to be their biggest quarter in a year and a half. And it hasn't happened yet because the weather didn't contribute over a weekend. So they operate in a much smaller cycle than we do. They're seasonal. If they were down in Florida, they could operate year round. They're up in Mass, and they do have year-round operation, but it's at limited capacity. They do Christmas stuff now and holiday stuff. They do the haunted hay rides, things like that. But so anyway, when you're putting this together, your balanced scorecard, that's for a year out.
I have a good question.
Yes.
When you're looking at these three different types, like real life scenario, I'm at work, like pretending I have people who like, there are some, not me, who are like better at data. Are you, say you want to go about this, are you literally calling it a balanced scorecard? Like, is this the language people use? Okay.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're taking a snapshot and you're balancing.
Okay.
You're looking at, basically, you're measuring short-term, kind of immediate,
Yep.
your long-term, and initiatives, which could be considered your BHAGs, right? And you can adjust that for the period of time that you want to adjust it. But typically, it's your KPIs that you want to look at that you can
And
flag
that's what
immediately.
people call them literally, like in the, like, do they call them anything else? Like my team wouldn't necessarily know, but pretend they did. I was like, you know what, let's do a KPI for this. You know what I'm saying?
So unfair question, because I do come from an operations background, so I've always called them
Yeah,
KPIs.
okay.
But
But then that does kind of answer my question too, though, in some way.
so the snooty one is gonna know what the KPI is, and no, and I do think like, and not necessarily like, so KPI is something that you can also have slang for at your organization. So maybe, you identify things as, like, we call it a key performance indicator. If for you, because the key performance indicator is heavily, it's from an operations standpoint, but more so from like a manufacturing standpoint. And it really started when they were looking at the yield of machinery. So they could identify these things and break down how many pieces were coming out an hour, how many were flawed, what percentage was flawed. So they had these key performance routines that were processed into the machines. They literally programmed them into the machines so they could determine which ones are good, which ones are bad. So it kind of translated over into industry, where when data started taking off, you were able to, lose the machine data and start pulling it out of other aspects, start collecting, structured, unstructured data, synthesizing it, putting it into your KPI, creating a KPI over it. So I think the more you work with it, the more it just becomes a KPI, but organizations will refer to it kind of as, they might have their own acronyms for it based on how they manage it, and if they have a large kind of like a data silo they collect on. So
Okay, I would just say, I worked for, my first job out of college, well, when I came home from California, worked for the Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
And our facilities team used KPIs, but like everybody else, like nobody else did.
Yeah.
So I thought I was like really savvy because I understood it. And then when I worked under Governor Malloy, they used a scorecard, and I was like, oh, do you use KPIs? And they looked at me like I was, so I thought I was super savvy, but I think it just depends on, right, Erica, would you say, like, where you work?
yes.
Like, if I said to my team, right, we were gonna do either of these, they would, like, Karen and Joanna would be like, huh? But like, we just track it in a different way. It's probably the same thing, we're just doing it our good one way, like our team.
All right,
I know
so
people are doing it at I avoid data like the plague, so but I'm not gonna be able to soon, so
you're gonna change that term. That term's gonna be,
Yeah,
I avoid data like COVID. So we're gonna have to rename that, but
Yeah.
so interesting that Hannah brings that up, because I sit on the scholarship committee. And we collect data, or Hannah's team collects data, and we make evaluations on key performance indicators. And we look at if did a student do their
We
essay?
just call it something nicer for me.
Exactly. But see, we use it, but we just rephrase it. So and it certainly, when we're making decisions and incorporating data, well, we're using KPIs because we're incorporating data to make a historical perspective of what we are doing and how we want to do it. Like, so we know for Six Flags, we're not going to bank everything on that first opening weekend, because if it rains again, then we lost all that money. So they're going to try to stagger some of their advertising coming up next year. So anyway, KPIs are live. KPIs happen real time. So let's see what do we got here. All right, OKRs. Again, OK and R. There should be a little like hash mark there. But they don't. So examples of good OKRs, we want to increase our recurring revenue. We're going to use these examples too when we go to our wine store shortly. So increasing our revenue, the share of monthly subscription increases by 85%, average subscription size of at least $295 per month, reduce churn to less than 1% monthly. Everybody know what churn is? Churn.
Butter.
Okay, it is. It's basically it's when you cycle through employees. You know, you're not able to keep folks. It's like turnover. Yeah, you can stay with the like the baking terms, like butter and turnovers and.
I've never heard that ever, so.
You've never heard churn? Really?
Sure.
I don't think I have either.
So another OKR, we're going to improve our internal employee engagement. We're going to look at our weekly satisfactions to keep those of at least 4.8 points. We're going to conduct weekly fun Fridays, all hands meetings with external speakers. Implement OKRs in all teams and departments by January 31st. So again, January 31st, we're talking first quarter here. These are long-term, but not super long-term goals, your OKRs. You got your two pieces of it where you're looking at the results, okay, versus your objective. Implement user testing process. So we're going to conduct at least 4 face-to-face testing sessions. We're going to receive at least 15 video interviews per month. Make sure at least 80% of our people interviewed are from our core target group, directors, VP, CEOs. So, I mean, this is like from an HR perspective, but you still want to have your O's and your K, your O, K, and your R to space that out. And again, looking at it for possibly next quarter. If I'm an HR person, I'm not going to say, let's look at this for next year, because next year is like a million years away for HR. And that's really, we can pull KPIs up on that, but you also, especially from a hiring perspective, a KPI might actually be too fast for an HR person because it's not going to give them the time to react. And if they make changes along the way, some of those changes are not going to have sufficient enough data to show that, you know, that it's either working or it's not working. So anyway, OKRs have their place, but again, quarter out, minimum, up to a year, then you go to your balanced scorecard. All right, so let's compare our OKRs to our BSCs. Again, a year out, established for the next quarter, at least parameters of creation for your BSC. Your goals are in 4 perspectives. You want your financial perspective, your customer perspective, your internal process, and your learning and growth. The parameters for your OKRs are, you don't rely on perspectives. So we're not looking back here and saying, okay, so our current is this. Right? We don't want that. We don't want to know. We want to make this assessment based on potential trends that we're getting through data. Like we're getting our predictive models. So we're not going to go and historically say, all right, so we had 350 new customers last year. We want to get to 350 at our next report. So a year out, they want to be up by another 35 customers. So our OKR is going to allow us, as we look at this, our OKR, we get these intermittent kind of light goals that we work on until the next quarter. Where in the BSC, we go from 315 to 350 employees. Over here, we're going to create these different levels in which we'll have attainable goals along the quarter. So each quarter we'll pick up, maybe we'll pick up 10 people each quarter. So at the end of 4 quarters, we'll have 40 people, where in our BSC, we wanted 35 people, and we just put that, that big goal out there. That's how we're going to get there. The OKR gives us kind of the roadmap for it. So there, and at the end of the day, I'm going over this stuff. You're going to spend most of your time with KPIs, and you're going to look at when you're doing your reports, your annual reports, and when you're doing your strategic plans. Most of those are done through BSC with some KPIs mixed in there to kind of start. I use the analogy of an oil tanker. An oil tanker, if I said, okay, I want you to take a left, it takes about 5 miles for that tanker to take a left. But you need a starting point, you need a coordinate. The KPI is your coordinate. And you start moving, and as you start moving left, you're going to gradually get to that left, but it's going to take a little while, and you need these KPIs along the way. And again, to the larger sense, your OKRs to kind of help you guide to your balanced scorecard. Everybody confused yet? You'll see how it really works when we start doing our, we're going to do our wine store. No samples tonight. All right, as we talked about earlier on, your business strategy and your data strategy, they do need to feed each other. They can't be independent. All right, but you have to remain consistent. So if you change your data strategy along the way, you're going to have to change your business strategy. And what happened last year is a lot of business strategies kind of went off track. They went off kilter, and the data strategy had to follow. And fortunately, where there was a lot of, even from an educational perspective, there was a lot of online programming that was done and virtual programming. Many organizations were able to somewhat get back to a basic business strategy for sustainability. The ones hit hardest, obviously, were the smaller ones, like the moms and pops that really had a hard time. A lot of restaurants went under. But the other piece is when you see some small businesses go under, what's the reason that most of them go under? Outside of the finances, but what's one of the big reasons why a lot of the organizations will go under? Excellent, yes. Their strategy, they don't have a sustainability plan. They go year to year. Family businesses, they don't have a ton of money for marketing, it's word of mouth. So if you lose that foot traffic, that's, a good chunk of your business. But the number one reason that organizations fail is because that their sustainability model, they outgrow it. They might have had one a few years ago and they try to replicate it instead of, modifying it to go with the existing trends and so forth. So, but whenever you modify your business strategy, you have to follow suit with your data strategy. If you change your data strategy, you've got to go and modify your business strategy. So they're not unique. You need that symmetry. Does this kind of look like a round-headed baby with like eyes far apart? There's a mouth right there. All right, I want to do our exercise now. I'm going to spin again so you guys can see the dry erase. I really want to try writing on these walls, but I don't know if they're. H-A-N-A-A.
I know, right? No H at the end, no, there
Wait, there's no H at the end
is.
here?
There is. It's being sarcastic, like, it's not the right hand for my name.
So I am going to write on these walls. Okay. So we're back to, what did we say our wine store was called? Did we name it?
Ask Anna that question.
Shush,
I
Sal.
thought we named it Maria's.
Did we?
I don't think so, but I'll take it.
But we want to.
That was, no, that might have been after that.
Yeah.
You want to rename it? Wines.
No, we had no name.
We didn't come up with a name. All right, who's got a name for our wine store?
Maria's.
Maria's wine.
Yes.
Guys are giving me a lot of power in this class.
We're speaking it into existence for Maria to have her own wine store.
This may be
We're
my
putting it out
future.
there.
I appreciate it.
So we
There
do,
you go.
we do Cynthia's vodka next week. Okay. All right. Take a break from that.
Oh, wow, you're getting fancy.
Wow.
Okay, man, what's that?
I didn't do anything.
And
Okay, so we got a wine store. I've come up with 10 KPIs that I know I could measure today and know how I was doing. Okay, know how we were doing for a store. So what I want us to do is come up with, you can start naming KPIs. And I'm gonna, these are, now again, arbitrary. These are my top 10. Doesn't mean they're the right ones. So what is one KPI we can measure immediately and know how we're doing? Sales. Sal with an E. Yes. Okay, that's our first KPI. So what is sales gonna tell us? What is sales gonna help us with? How many customers are coming in our store?
What we're selling them.
What we're selling? When we're selling it? So these are things that we can pull a KPI 1, KPI 2, KPI 3. We can pull 3 easy off of sales. Right, so you see how this works? Like, so sales is our first one. Sales is going to tell us who. You're going to tell us what. Right, you're going to tell us what we're selling. You guys see that from way back there? Because I can move this one. You're going to tell us when. Right, and a good KPI should be able to do that for us. But we can measure that. Ooh. The cord. This cord. Okay, so what's another KPI we want to look at? I'm going to throw a little subset in here for you. All right. What if we were to measure, and stay with sales, we're going to do sales per square foot. What will that tell us? So,
If we're being on, are we covering?
so, all right, well, let's break it down. I'm going to go crazy on this wall here. Right? So here's our liquor store, right? Here's our front door, our little awning.
For how long?
Wouldn't that break it down to see how efficient like your sales and space is? Like how efficient your space is working for you?
Exactly. So if I know that through my KPIs, I know what we're selling, right? I know what we're selling, and what we're selling is back in this corner of the store, okay? Remember we talked about what data does? When we track our location in the store. So if I know that's my most popular product, what do I do with it? Where? Where do I move it?
I said the hot spot, like wherever your most sales are happening. Oh, we're in the front.
So no, this is the back. This is the front door right here.
But couldn't you keep it in the back and then that would force people to walk past more products that they might like?
Absolutely. So
Why Maria owns the store.
here comes, that's right. That's why your name's on it, Maria. So they have,
All the colors of wine.
now they have to go here to cash out. So they literally are covering, they're traversing most of our store. And remember, if they're in our store longer, what happens?
We buy more.
Right.
But
So-
you can do that, I'm sorry, I was writing down something, so. It's, you know the product in that corner sells the most
How do we know that?
in sales.
From our sales, from our receipts, or
Yeah.
point of sale receipts.
So you moved it to the corner to create more sales per square.
Well, so
That's what it
we,
was.
we know, even before we moved it, so we knew our product was back here.
Yeah.
That just so happened to be the most popular product in the store, okay?
Okay.
So we're gonna leave it back there because we know people are gonna have to walk by to get to it. But we also know now, when we look at sales per square foot, we know that, you know, these maybe 80 square feet right here, where customers are shopping and buying,
Yeah.
are much more valuable than these 80 square feet right here. So we can determine a value on our square footage. Now, why is that important? How many people, when you did go to the mall, right? You know those little wagons out there? So they didn't have stores, but they have kiosks. So they can say, look, we know that if we put your kiosk over here between Filene's and the food court, or Macy's and the food court, you're gonna have more traffic than if we put it over here by, you know, I can't even think of like stores that are like not even popular, but.
Sunglass Hut.
Right, Sunglass Hut. Who buys sunglasses on a rainy day? You know, you go to the mall on a rainy day, but you're not buying sunglasses. So, if you can determine the value of your square footage, it allows you to then increase, you can rent out space. You know that if your square footage up here is low, and I want to attract people there, maybe that's where I do my wine tastings up here. So you're developing kind of a hot chart for the pieces, the places in your store that are actually money makers for you. You can do that by looking at your point of sale information, you can look at sensors, you can look at length of time in the store. There's so many pieces of internal data you can pull to make that determination. So.
Or could you then flip that as well? Right, so if there was that, Maria had a half bottle of wine that everybody wanted in the front of the store, but you wanted customers to stay longer, right? You would then, same sort of concept, right? You would move it sort of to the back of the store so that people,
They're gonna come
Absolutely.
and get it. no
because they're
matter
still
what.
gonna come and get it, and then you could then maybe have some other fun thing in the front that maybe gets them from the view, because you were from the store, from the street view, sorry, because we already know they're gonna come.
Right.
Is that like, all right, is that why like Costco, like constantly changes their stuff?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely. Because we're creatures of habit. We go right to the section. Same with Target. We go right to the section that we want to get our things. And Target doesn't want us to leave. Target wants us to stick around for a little while because there's always something we need at Target. So they're always shifting around their aisles. But to Hannah's point, so if I did find something, let's say I moved Maria's bottle of wine over here, right? So people, where are they gonna go when they first walk in the store?
To the old
They're
spot,
gonna go right here. So what do I put there?
new hot product.
whatever I want to sell.
I was just gonna say, you can use it to push product.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Because habitually, we're going to go to that spot because we know that that's where our stuff is. And, but we identify that, sales per square foot, we can identify the value of a specific area. And it's very popular, again, with your retailers that will track GPS and leverage for position in the aisle, where Crest is going to be in a certain position in Target, Colgate next to it, and I don't know, Pepsi, whatever the other toothpastes are, but they're going to be, so they jockey for that hot position in the aisle. We're a mom and pop. We can do whatever we want. We can move our product around. We don't have vendors telling us that we have to have certain end caps that have their promotional items that they're sending coupons out on. So it's interesting if we can determine the value within our store, because it's going to also help us get to our main goal of keeping a 10%, consistent 10% increase in revenue month to month. So now we know we've got a hot product over here. If we move something that's not quite as hot, we put over there, or we do something seasonal, like where we put like a new wine that is only going to be available for a couple of months. So we put that in the corner that we want to sell it because people are going to go there first. So everybody kind of follow that sales per square foot and looking at our sales to make the who, the what, the when, right? We got that? What's another KPI that is valuable? Something that's easy to measure. You don't need a pro to measure it. That's definitely one of them. We're going to come back to that one. Continue.
I think, is it social media?
It is.
Inventory?
I'm not taking credit for it. You just didn't hear her.
I'm sorry. All the high flyers in the back of the room. How can we measure social media? How is that going to help us? What are some of the things that, let's go back to our W's. What's our first W?
Beware.
Beware. What if we have a lot of people that are liking our site and they're from California and we're sitting here in Connecticut, right? So that's an immediate KPI that we can look at to say, let's evaluate either a distant line, like we can create something to sell online. We can have a distributor selling for us because a third of our hits in the last week are from California, Napa Valley. So location is huge.
Grouping like a lot of that stuff into just like leads, whether that be location-based leads or product-based leads, that kind of thing.
Yes, so I would bet that if I ran a leads analysis report or like a Google Analytics report versus like social media demo hit chart, that you would see a lot of alignment because we're driving people to our website, and that's ideally what we want to do. We want to get people in the store, but if we know that we're targeting an area that's outside of our 20 miles typically for a store, then we want to see how we can access that group, how we can get in front of them. So definitely through a sales flow chart. What else are we going to find out with social media? What's our other W? I think somebody did say it. One of my favorite rock bands of all time.
Ooh.
It's the what, actually. I love the what.
And the one.
The Wens. Oh my God, I have all the Wens albums. So who? We want to know who's clicking on us. We want to know who's liking us, who's tagging us. And we can look at that immediately and see where our customers are and who our customers are. So now we've got location, we've got people buyers. Last W here, what's it gonna be? What was that?
I was saying what? What were you gonna say?
Like, are the boozers clicking on it at 9 AM or at 3 o'clock?
So how is Wayne gonna help us? How is Wayne gonna help us?
Like when you have maybe a special going on.
Yep. Maybe
Oh,
we
yeah.
talk with
You had
our,
said before, like staffing too, right? So when to have more people in the store versus less working?
so now you can see that, so we know who, based on, without having this super complicated algorithm, we can have one of our summer interns that Maria brought in to work, that's, you know, one of the stats students from UMass Boston, or I'm sorry, UMass Amherst out in the Mount Ida campus, but that can look at that and say, okay, on Instagram, we had this many folks from this area at this time, and they look over at Facebook and they can run a correlation report. So you can see, remember we talked about that last week, where you look at the correlation of the two trends to see when the activity is. And then you go into Snapchat maybe, or you look at Twitter. So you basically reconcile all of your social media platforms so you can pinpoint where people are looking at us from, who is looking at us, and when they're looking at us.
Oh, you wanna see what they're looking at?
Well, because we control
I
that.
really wanna get that what in there.
But so now, but don't forget, this is social media.
Yeah, but I guess I'm looking, and I could be totally wrong, and that's fine, but I guess I'm looking at it from the perspective of like, if you're trying to figure out, even if it's like, what posts get the most
Yes.
traction, what draws people, because if I'm scrolling through a ton of social media and I see a wine I like, I admittedly will stop and be like, oh, is it a sale, is it this? So that's what I was looking at it
Yes.
from that way.
But you're looking at it almost from the sense that we're basically publishing our website.
Okay.
We're putting the post up. So we put the post up, we put the bottle of Maria's wine up
Yeah,
that we wanted to sell, and that's the activity we get. So for each particular item we post,
because we created the what.
correct, it's our
Okay,
content.
Okay.
So now, if we wanted to monitor web traffic, we could answer these same KPIs. We would rely on like Google Analytics to look at how long somebody stayed on our page, you know, the rate of click-through, where they actually went from, you know, from the splash page into the actual site. So when we control the content, we know what we have out there already.
Sure.
But we're also going to identify the KPI as, you know, Dino number 6 on December 12th, 2020. So we're gonna identify it, and then we're gonna track that particular
I see
item.
what you're saying.
So for every post, we'll have a separate KPI. Everybody got that? This almost looks like a Breaking Bad little base they have up there. Okay. Sal, what would you say before?
Cash flow.
Cash flow is a biggie. We can pull up cash flow and know immediately if we're okay or if we're in trouble, right? So a little different than the who, what, when. The cash flow is going to indicate to us that we're going to have to make adjustments. That could be your staffing, that could be your product, your inventory, you know, how much we carry. So cash flow is an immediate indicator and probably one of your best KPIs. You can't fake cash flow. I can go on all day long and start clicking on, you know, I like this bottle of wine. And get to my work computer, I like this bottle of wine. And, you know, get on my iPad, I like this bottle of wine. So you have an opportunity to see some of the data when you have people that have basically Pinterest accounts and they're kind of consolidating all their social media into one click, so you're getting 4 clicks from one person. For cash flow, you can't hide behind that. So cash flow is an outstanding indicator for a KPI. What else? Maria, how about an HR one? Throw me an HR one.
Employee engagement.
Employee engagement is a fantastic one. I use this. How do we measure employee engagement?
I mean, you can look at tenure, people referring others, whether or not you would recommend the company to your friends, things like that.
And we know we have a small store, we're not huge. So it's much easier to manage employee engagement at our line store than it is to manage employee engagement at like a Mass Mutual or like a or a big insurance company, because again, we don't have the capabilities to send out a survey monkey every 8 weeks and ask employees how engaged they are. But we do have the opportunity, based on our size, to have one-on-ones with every employee in our store. So when we have a one-on-one with somebody, what are we collecting?
Qualitative.
Yes.
Yeah, just remember I said that.
Yeah. Internal, external,
Internal.
structured,
Yeah, unstructured. Right.
unstructured. Because we have to then,
Am I learning, everyone?
I'm learning.
so Hannah just like took the diploma and put it to her head like the scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. And she just recited some type of,
Somehow it just came off my tongue, David. Just like that. Just like that.
you ever seen Old School with Will Ferrell? You just did the debate scene.
Yeah, I just got it. I just did it. Sweating.
You just debated James Carville. So now we can have an interview with an employee and have them tell us things that, we didn't know or that we thought we knew. And then what we can do is reconcile that when we meet with our other employees. So we don't need to have the survey monkey go out to tell us that 64% of our employees are engaged. By keeping employees engaged, we create a consistency, which our customers are going to be happy because they're going to be dealing with the same people. And if we can also conversely in our one-on-ones through our conversations of collecting data. If they're disengaged, and if they're disengaged, it might be time to part ways and find somebody else because our customers aren't really engaging with that individual. It's another way to track employee engagement. Under what?
Would it be like their time maybe?
Look at their time, if they use their take time off leave, if we have it to them. And also we can look at from paid time off, we can look at their, all these acronyms, POS, not what you think it is, point of sale. So we can tell how many employees are ringing up people. It's not commission. So again, I got to show you guys. So I'm going to post it of the guy that does the IKEA jokes, like we need more cashiers. And I think Walmart's actually going to a completely, is this right, Sal? Walmart's going to go to a completely automated store soon. Not every store, but they're going to try it with the, so no cashiers, just all.
I mean, I heard that, but I don't even know. They only put up a few self-checkout.
So the joke is like the person, they tell the person that you need more cashiers. And his response is, what do you think I call dibs? That we're all waiting in the back to see who can wait on you. He's like, I'm a part-time seasonal employee that gave my 2-week notice. I don't need to hear, it's pretty funny, but it's true because you can tell from your register who's ringing up the folks. So who's actually engaging with your customers? So those are immediate KPIs where from an HR perspective, you can say, hey, look, you're a great employee. You show up every day. Well, you only talk to 2 customers a week. So I'm not paying you to play solitaire in the back. So there's indicators that you're going to use for internal, external sales, and it does tie in again to our 10% goal because it's going to help us run leaner. We know that if this person's working 30 hours a week, and only engaging with 2 customers, how valuable of an employee is that to us? We don't necessarily need that person, or somebody else could pick up the slack and wait on the other 2 people that this person didn't wait on. And we're saving ourselves quite a bit of money in payroll for a particular week, which then contributes to our 10% revenue increase month to month without selling another item. So that's how data is going to allow us to kind of drill down from an HR perspective to kind of make us a little more leaner and a little more lucrative from a revenue standpoint. Okay, somebody give me another one.
Inventory terms?
Excellent. So we look at, let me go over here now. KPIs. So what's inventory going to tell us?
What we're selling, how much we're selling, what's not selling.
If we run that KPI, okay, we can then look at our sales per square foot. We can identify the lowest selling product that we have, and where are we going to put it?
In the hot spot.
We're going to put it in the hot spot. We're going to put it there because people are going to walk in there and they're going to say, you know what, I'll give this a try. And we'll try to promote it by moving it back, to where it is. Let's say we find we have another product that is kind of middle of the road. No, it's not. It's a product that we know from a cost standpoint that we're paying a little bit more for it. It might be kind of a high-end wholesaler that we're buying it from. We have a few customers that really like it and come in every week and ask for it. So we might move that product back to a higher traffic, to an area that we know there's going to be more customers, that there's going to be more traffic based on our KPI for sales per square foot. And then we can then justify maybe paying a little bit more because we know we're going to drive them to a part of the store that people typically buy more from. So if we can cordon off our store into the hot spots, our inventory is going to work, again, hand in glove with the valuable points of the store, so we can set our store up, basically have people walk in and spend money without even knowing it. I mean, it's not that easy, but we can put our inventory where they're going to go. And data, I think it was week 2 we talked about it. Know more about what your customer wants than they do. That's what we're doing when we look at our historic sales. We look at our inventory, we look at our cash flow, we look at who's looking at us at social media, what they're looking at, when they're looking at it, what they're buying, when they're buying it, who's ringing them up, when they're ringing them up. So these might seem like completely different items to you, but they all tie in to the same thing. So as we build our KPIs up, we turn those into OKRs, we get a little broader, and then we kind of pinpoint our results of what we want, and then we build our balanced scorecard, which gives us that year-to-year projection. Okay, so see how it's kind of like these KPIs are really the foundation of building your strategy. You need good KPIs to build your strategy.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you know how you were talking about with social media and how the what wasn't included in that?
Mhm.
How come now inventory would be its own separate thing? Because that to me, I feel like was more, like, I guess I'm having trouble understanding the difference between sales and the inventory. Because when we were talking about the sales, we talked about, like, you know what is being sold. So if you already know what's being sold, you know what's not being sold. So why would inventory then be its own separate KPI? But if what we're marketing on social media and putting out there to like sell wouldn't.
Okay, that's a great question. Now, It doesn't mean, so social media, we're promoting a specific product. And what we talked about is aligning our sales report to say, okay, we know that for where everybody's, you know, from the zip codes that we're selling to, based on our point of sale information, that this is what our inventory should look like, right? But if we look at inventory as a separate KPI, let's say we don't have a social media presence, we look at inventory, this is going to allow us to put into perspective where in the store our customers are. Like going back to Target with the toothpaste or the mouthwash, we know the customer is only going to walk 6 feet into the aisle and get that. So if I'm one of those companies, I'm gonna be like, hey, I want my product in the first 6 feet of the aisle.
Learn that in that sales part of the sales per square feet, or is that data that we've already derived from that first part?
Correct. It's kind of, it's layering on. So sales, we know what we're selling. Sales per square feet, we know where we're selling it from. Okay. So if I ran my KPI for inventory and it doesn't align with that, what's the problem? Shrinkage. It might not even be stealing. Shrinkage is not a George Costanza term, right? I was in the pool, but we could have a loading dock problem. We could have a purchasing problem. It could be that, you know, bottles are breaking along the way. It could be that we have a theft problem. So we need to run separate KPIs to reconcile these different pieces. Cash flow, if we show an inventory where we're selling $5,000 a month worth of wine, but all of a sudden our cash flow shows that, wait a minute, running leaner, fewer employees, cut our hours, we sold X amount of wine, but we're only making this right now, we should be at this. Then I go back to my KPIs and I say, okay, where am I missing? So you always want to do kind of a checks and balance with these, but you can, I know it's a crazy statement, but you can never have enough KPIs because they always kind of bring you back to, you want to answer that one question. And our question is, we want to get, how can we get 10% more in revenue each month? So, you know, again, and I picked 10 KPIs, said, I think if I was running the store, this is what I would want to do. So, does that make sense? Your inventory, you're welcome. Your inventory is always going to be subject to, there's 3 people handling it before your cashier does. So there's always the opportunity to lose it through, you know, theft, breakage. It's I think a little more difficult in wine than it would be in retail, where shrinkage is almost like 10% of most stores' inventories. And it's primarily through shoplifting. So, and employee theft. Employee theft is brutal. All right, let's do one more KPI.
You pick one from your list.
Okay. My personal favorite one, because I like doing the math, is conversion rate. So
Because that's the one we were gonna get. That was it, Eric.
I know.
Dang it.
I know I stole your thunder, I apologize. But if we look at conversion rate, I have like the worst when I start writing in uppercase and lowercase. I'm more of an uppercase writer, but all right, so conversion rate. Remember, here's in front of our store again, right? Here's in front of our store. So when we look at our little cameras here, right? That are looking at people that are walking by our store. And we've got our little chime in here, doorbell chime, that's measuring when somebody walks through the front door, right? And we got our registers up here that are measuring from when the person walks in to how long they spend in our store, okay? So what is our conversion rate going to do for us? What do we look at when we figure our conversion rate? What's the first thing that we measure?
How many people walk by the
How
store?
many people walk by our store? So we have
I got it.
1,000 people walk bys. So we know we're in a pretty good spot, right? What's the next thing we measure? One before. One before that.
Like stop and look.
How many stop? How many stop? You can almost do like a 2 and a 2A. So how many stop? We're going to say that.
So is that
600.
camera shooting outside the store?
Yeah. Laser beams. Well, I mean, it's like a ring camera. A lot of people use ring cameras.
Because my first instinct was who comes in the store too, and then you said, what's before that? I wouldn't think to watch people who stop.
So what I would reconcile is when I get them on camera to when the door chimes.
Gotcha.
So I would have to analyze that data to look at my foot traffic versus my rings. So now we said how many stop, right? So if I have a real fancy like display case here, because we know Maria's high end, right? So I can also look at what they're stopping in front of, and that's GPS. I can look at what they're stopping at. I can say, whoa, wait a minute. Of the 600 people that stopped, 425 stopped here, another 100 stopped here, and 75 stopped here. So I can then say, well, when I want to really move a product, I'm going to pick this item right here. I'm going to put it in that front window because I know more people will stop. And if more people stop, they're more likely to go in. So we got 100 people that stop. You want to do a little subset. So
You're also giving Maria's mom and pop shop a lot of credit that they have all the technology going on.
but think about it. That's a $200 security system / you can set up these things on your own right now. These Ring doorbells, you can watch the activity of your storefront from your computer right there. So it's not like we're setting up, the FBI surveillance lab. These things are really easy to set up, and more small businesses can afford these things now because technology's gotten a lot more accessible.
So here, I'm being serious now. So you've got the mom and pop shop, they've got their $200 ring. Like now we're assuming they have staff who can do all this analyzing.
Well,
We get it. Maria doesn't own the wine shop in real life, so, but that's like, it's sort of your Augie and Ray's point too, though, right?
right. If we're at the point of doing KPIs, then we better have somebody that's going to be looking at this. But it doesn't mean every wine shop is going to be doing KPIs, which we talked about earlier. The reason that these places fail is because they don't put a sustainability model in place.
Yeah.
So they kind of go quarter to quarter, year to year, and when the pandemic hits, they're out.
Yeah.
So let's say that Maria was smart and used her stimulus money to build put a security system on the corner of her property to just kind of monitor foot traffic. Gives her an insurance break because she can see if anybody throws a rock through a window or anything like that. So anyway, we're looking at our 600 stop. We're going to say 425 for window A, 125 in window B, and what's that for? 550 and 50 people stopped in window C. Okay, so not that we're going to need that. Nice to know. Nice to know if we want to start moving some around, want to see why is everybody stopping here? So then if I'm going to promote something, if I want to write, hey, big sale, I'm going to put it in this window more than I'm going to put it in my other 2 windows. So, all right, so we look at our walk by, we got our stop, and John, what did you say? Inside. Of those 600 that stopped, 300 went inside. Okay. So I know it's not a math class, but what's the percentage of people that go in that stop?
Half.
50%, right? Almost a third of the people that walk by stop at our store. Okay. So 1,000 that walk by, 300 that come inside. So now we've got them in the store. They're in our lair. There are captors, customers now, right? So obviously, we want every one of them to make the trek to go around here. So we're gonna put the good product in the back. We're gonna put like the Boone's Farm and the Mad Dog 2020. We're gonna put that like up here. So you're gonna walk right by it because they're high-end alcoholics and they're gonna want to go down to the expensive stuff, right? So so now they're in our store. So really we can kind of control them at that point, what we want them to do. So one of the things that when we're looking at the folks that are inside our store, what's the next measurement that we have for them to kind of come up with our conversion ratio?
Did they buy?
Right. We're
We
gonna
care about
say,
time spent or no?
well, we can do that as a subcategory. Again,
Okay.
we can add that KPI because we can look at, and when we talk about time spent, that's where we want to say, boy, our average time in store, once the folks are in here, is 3 minutes. Okay, so that means we've got a customer that knows what they want, typically, or really like our display, or maybe they're shopping for a friend, or they're picking up a gift for somebody at work. 100 of those folks buy. So of the 100 that buy, what was their average time in the store? So we then build another KPI to look at how long that person was in the store. We can make our assessment. Folks that, if they're in the store longer than 3 minutes, they were more likely to buy something than if they're in the store for less than 3 minutes. Because your folks that are in the store for 3 minutes are walking in, maybe they're double parked, they're walking in, getting their bottle of wine to go home to have dinner, maybe. Where the folks that are shopping around, those are the ones that you're gonna wanna direct around the store to say, hey, look back here, this is really good stuff back here. So, so we know, for us, 1,000 customers walk by our front of our store, 100 of those customers buy. So if we wanna sell 1,000 items, okay? We're gonna have 1,000 customers. At the end of the month, how many walk-bys do we need?
10,000.
10,000. So that means we need to get 10,000 people to walk by that store,
There needs to be a mall.
maybe. Or we need to promote. So maybe we throw some sandwich boards up here, you know?
We gotta get one of those people that's like spinning the arrow towards us. I'm gonna hire one of those.
Yeah, well, we get the, is it Progressive? I can't think of the commercial with the guy that he starts giving his buddy nicknames, but then, or the wacky wavy inflatable arm guy, we'll put them out there. So we know that 10,000 people need to walk by that store for us to have 100 customers that go in and actually buy something. That means our ratio is one per 10, right? One customer per every 100 employees, 100 people that walk by, right? 2 zeros. So if we look at how can we adjust our KPI, if we know that we're looking at, and it's a tall order to get 10,000 people to walk by our store, then we start tearing it apart from the inside. Then we look at our HR, we look at our hours, we look at our staffing, we look at our inventory. Maybe we have too much inventory. Maybe the stuff up in this part of the store is not selling. So do we actually look to rent out space? Maybe we sub some space out to somebody that's selling, a similar product. Maybe somebody like a local brewery that's selling, kind of an IPA. Maybe we then adjust our store to say it's Maria's Wine and Spirits instead of Maria's Wines. So those KPIs are going to give us live snapshots to help us build up our OKRs, which in turn are going to build up our balanced scorecard. And it's going to help us make that assessment going, again, live to quarterly to annually. And if it's live, if we're working with a live strategic plan, then we can make these modifications on the fly. You don't have to wait for a second or third year to pass. Because as we talked about, a lot of organizations don't have that benefit. They have to operate in a almost kind of microwave mentality of right now, where there's such a volatile economy right now. Organizations are having a hard time staying afloat, so they might do a KPI analysis, maybe once a month, where they used to do it once a quarter. So any questions on our KPIs? Anybody want to do another one, or are we good with that one? I saw like everybody's hand go up, like I have one. You good, Elise? Okay. Elise was like.
Unless you want to talk about more free samples.
Okay, right, okay. Maria's kind of put the kibosh on free samples, so,
I'm
she's,
saving those for myself.
all right, so let's look at, I just want to see where we should go, because I don't want to water it down, I don't want to confuse it too much. We did our balance scorecard. Let's wrap with, I would rather look at when the role that we will have, it kind of touches on 650 a little bit. Here, let me go back to my board here. Okay, our role in developing a data strategy, right? Align your projects to your KPIs. So always start with your KPI, but as a leader, don't find yourself aligning your KPIs to easy measurables, right? So it's kind of like adjusting the axis when we're trying to present data. We can shift it to make it look as good as we want. We can pick KPIs that are going to make us look great, right? We can say, well, yeah, but 600 staff, but 425 of them looked in that window. It's like, okay, big deal. But we can spin it so it looks good. So align your projects, the things that you're going to work on, to your KPIs, and those, again, the BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious goals that you're going to set for your organization. You're going to start with KPIs that align with, that kind of lay that brickwork for that foundation. We've premised our whole wine store on raising revenue 10% monthly. So you want to make sure that your questions that you're asking as a leader are pointed in a way that you're still aligning yourself to your strategic plan. You're not mimicking it, you're aligning with it. So if your strategic plan for your organization says we want to see, my world, we want to see a 1% annual increase in student retention. So I'm not going to pull the data out and say, yeah, we're going to do 8%, because then we're not aligning. So that means it's not a legitimate goal from one of us. Either 1% is way too low or 7% additional is way too high. So you want to align your strategy, your data strategy, with what your strategic plan is looking to do. Integrate your data strategy with your strategic plan. It's not a standalone. Drive business decisions, improve business operations, increase revenue. We've been beating that up all night. So it's kind of like somewhat of a summary of you have to be aligned, okay? You have to be aligned. Imagine if the Blue Angels just all took their own, they're going to do their own course. They're going to do their own, they're going to figure out where they need to be in their space. Unfortunately, you wouldn't have Blue Angels anymore. They'd be real angels, but it needs to be unique to you, not to your competition. It needs to be unique to what your growths are. You're building these items. The KPIs that we put together to build our strategy for Maria's Wine would not work with Liquors 44 or with, the Sam Adams store up in Boston. they're specific to us. The data we collect is specific to us. Our customers are specific to us, and we're looking to grow that. Actionable, which means look for it. You're going to, it's not an overnight fix. It's a staggered operation that you need to be able to hit milestones. Again, for me with the annual retention, we need to figure out how we're going to get there, and we need to have measurables. Like first quarter, we're at a great pace. We're at 0.75. Second quarter, well, that's a little low. We flatlined. We're still at 0.75. Third quarter. So we know come fourth quarter, we can say, yeah, we're there. We know we're there. If we're not there, what do we do? I go back to my basics. I start back to my basics. And I start building my plan based around what happened, because operationally, we're doing the same thing. It doesn't mean the economy plays with us. It doesn't mean that they have to play nice. So we need to do items within our KPI and our OKRs that are actionable, that we can actually build on. And this is our little evolution, it's our Darwin piece here, but that we can grow. So we can grow and evolve as an organization, which obviously gets us to sustainability. Without sustainability, we're toast. So any organization that does not have a sustainability model in place is not a very valuable organization. This is more of like stuff that we were talking about tonight. This is in the notes in there. I really don't want to kind of keep beating up on that, because it's talking about like us being unique and how we can make these shifts. Go to our week 6 assignments. Who has questions about KPIs, OKRs, balanced scorecards? I want to talk about just a little bit too about it's 650, because some of the things that we're doing now, everybody got a good handle on SWOT analysis? Yay, nay? So 650, we spend a lot more time with SWOT analysis because it's where we're building our strategic plan, where we looked at it in this past paper in week 3 or module 3 to build a data strategy. So for 650, the example that I've always loved to use, and I think we're going to do a case study on it, is Nokia. And actually, one of my really good friends who I had lunch with Saturday is worked for Nokia, went to University of Indiana grad school, and got a job with Nokia, and was just shocked of how adaptable they are. I mean, it was a great experience, and he kind of got me hooked on it. And the coolest piece was, I don't know if you guys read it, because I did include it in some of the readings, but maybe read the piece on the Oracle. Like, the Oracle, you know what the Oracle is? It's like this woman in ancient Rome.
Old wives, women like.
Yes. So there's a great kind of I mean, obviously, how are you gonna really pick that apart? But so people would go up to the Oracle for advice. And if the Oracle, if she started to like tremble and the earth started moving, and she would look like, she was like basically going into a trance, then they knew this is what we have to do. So that's how they were making decisions, right? So now research has shown us that where the site of the Oracle was, is basically built on a natural gas. So it's like kind of like ancient fracking type thing, but it was. So what was happening is the person that was sitting on this throne was basically having these like methane highs and kind of not really seizing, but was like just kind of ready to pass out. And sometimes they would pass out, which means, wow, that's a great idea. We've got to go with that. They would literally base people's living or dying on that, where they would have executions and so forth. They consult with the Oracle. So she was on a fault line, and that's where you get the vibrations and the shaking and so forth. It wasn't her causing it. She was the cause. She was feeling the cause of like some natural shifting in the earth. But obviously we didn't have like the seismic charts back in ancient Rome to say, hey, no, we see a pattern here. So they use that data to make a decision based on a reaction, where now we've totally disproved the hypothesis that, no, this is why you were getting these reactions, because she's basically getting high huffing gas on a fault line. So she wasn't seizing, or she wasn't like, you know. So anyway, when we talk about like organizations that will just sit on their laurels and say, forget it, we're sticking with this, which is really what happened with Nokia, where they said, well, this is what we know. We're going to consult with our internal experts, their own oracles, and we're not going to go in the direction of smartphones. So we're going to say people aren't going to want computers in their pockets, this and that. And how many people own a Nokia phone in this room? Anybody? Nope. How many had a Nokia phone? I love my Nokia too. I loved it. I had one of the little blue ones with the internal antenna. I love that thing. But, you know, and if you dropped it, you didn't have to replace your screen, you know? But anyway, when we look at 650, it's going to do our data strategy is a component of that, but you're going to see how some organizations kind of rely on their own internal KPIs that they create to inflate their self-worth when they're just fooling themselves into oblivion. And fortunately, Nokia reinvented again, but that's a good project we do in 650. I think you like it. So, any other questions before we talk about next week? No? Okay. So there's a paper due, and I put in, actually, I'll talk about the paper first, because this will sound redundant. That's the warning. That's like your Surgeon General warning. You are not going crazy. This will sound redundant. The whole point of this paper is to get you comfortable writing a summary. And there's a video that I pasted under the assignment so you can see what a summary is. But a summary is really, you're just kind of covering the surface. Remember the old the iceberg analogy, where you see a big chunk of ice on the surface, but it's actually like a mile deep. You don't see any of that. A summary, we want the surface. We just want the stuff on top. And you don't want to get in the weeds too much, but most of the submissions that you'll do professionally will be summaries. You're not going to sit down and write a 5-page APA formatted paper to your boss to say, hey, this is what I think about the new, the new healthcare plan that we let Dwight Schrute pick. Another Office reference. So anyway, it will sound redundant. It's quality, not quantity. You will work on a press release in the coming semesters. I'm not sure if it's still British Airways, but you really want to say the most you can in the least amount of space, because a summary is designed to do what? It's not a trick question, it's a root of the word.
Summarize.
Review.
Exactly. Summarize. So we want like a 30,000-foot look down, say, hey, this is what's going on, okay? And the question is, did they follow the Bader framework when they made their decision to acquire Tavana? Very, very simple. If you feel like you're plagiarizing your own work, you probably are, because you've already written similar pieces that we pieced together. So don't just keep it in mind that it is a summary, okay? And there's again a piece on the summary with this assignment, like a little how to write a summary. And your discussion question is, we're looking at pay rates, and there's this really fancy scale in there. And we talked about it last week when we were showing the different pay rates and so forth and how to easily identify those. When we looked at the charts, we looked at a real elaborate chart and then we looked at a real basic chart. There's a really basic chart in there that's showing you median earnings and scanning. And you're going to make an assessment and an opinion on looking at broad occupational categories. The highest pay goes to managers, followed by experts in computers and mathematics. The lowest paid occupational groups involves agricultural and the services, personal care and food prep. So you're going to look at that, right? I'm going to pull it up in a sec if anybody doesn't have it up. So, and you're going to look at the median rate in each particular category. And it's basically for this particular position for an HR manager, is that rate something that falls in line with the data that you have in front of you? So no research required on this. You're going to look at the data you have in front of you. You're going to make an assessment on it. And you're going to see if that HR person at $47.38 an hour is actually the going rate. Okay. And if so, why? And if not, why? So I will pull that up too so you guys can see it.
So Eric, no citations or no?
No, no citations. You're going to do 250 words, couple of replies. I will tell you guys, I love reading your posts way more than when you have to fake these citations to get them in there, because there's actual substance to it. It's not like, you know, you have to cut it back a couple sentences because you want to make sure you can fit a Mars sentence and, you know, Mars quote in there. They're really good. So I'm definitely not a big fan of citations in your inside of your discussion boards. So, all right. Any questions on the this assignment?
How many replies do you have?
There's, let me see, there's 12 in the class, so 12. No, I'm just kidding. Two replies. That's it. 2 good replies.
Eric, just so you know, the post, the discussion on our Canvas site says 2 citations.
It does.
It does. And I just know Carolyn posts quicker than most, so she probably would post, she would probably get a citation.
All right. I'll do that tonight.
I'm just looking out.
You're very good teammate.
No, because I was like writing down what I should look out for.
Okay, so all right, so let me look to see where so, yeah, here it is. Is that it? That's this week's. So you can see we've got our simpler chart here. Honestly though, like I like to be like right in this category right here. Not pay wise necessarily, but if I was living off the grid, I could certainly make that work with farming and fishing and forestry. I'd love to be out in that neck of the woods. All right, let's see if I can find my other one. Oh, and also Sandy posted, there is a, the essays, the surveys are coming in through IOTA. So be on the lookout for those. I think they're in, I know distance learning's posts to everybody's page. So that's where you can kind of really hammer me to figure out how you can get out of data for a class in the master's program. It's not showing up in my coming up, Hannah, so it must be still in my modules.
Yeah, it just comes up in ours under to do. Okay, it looks like I have a lot of to dos just to do.
We're talking about the bonus question right now.
Just like module 7 and all that stuff.
All right, so that's one. What's our writing assignment? And there's your little video on writing a perfect summary.
That, there's a PowerPoint in there, on like writing APA.
Yeah.
That was actually, I saved it. That was helpful. I like looked through it. It was like helpful little tips and tricks in there.
Was that a guy or a woman that, you know, that was it a voiceover?
I didn't listen to it. I just looked through
Okay.
it, so I'm not sure.
Because we brought a student in to basically do it. He wrote a book. Oh, you remember? Do you remember Chris?
Chris Blake?
Yeah.
I loved Chris Blake. Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked with him.
So Chris wrote a book.
You did?
Yeah, it's actually on Amazon. It's like some mystery novel he wrote, like a big one.
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah,
thick
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, I knew that. I thought you meant he wrote like APA.
No, but he came in and did a presentation on
Hey, where was
APA.
that?
It was under week 6.
Under
Under like,
read, watch,
like
and
it was the
listen?
class PowerPoint and then there
Oh,
was.
there
one
it is.
under.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like a helpful little.
It's under overview and outcomes.
No, under the read, watch, or listen.
Oh, yeah, there he is. There it is. That's a good one.
And then right there, yeah.
It was Blake, yeah.
Oh, this is a good egg.
So let's see if there's all of his books in here. Anyway, so if you go to the week 6 notes, I thought I had that earlier too, because Chris did that a while ago.
I
Yeah,
might have, you might have, but I just noticed it.
they pulled a lot when they carried over the shell, because they took some of the online content and they moved it over to us. That's why you'll see sometimes it's like discussion board 1, because online that's 2 discussion boards. See how lucky you guys are?
I think I found another way to pull up the bonus.
All right, walk me through it, Elise.
If you go to home and then kind of like where that to-do one was, but up top it said like, the new course stream, and I clicked on new course.
New course stream.
And then I clicked on announcement assignment.
Oh, very good. June 16th. Assignment has been deleted. What the heck? Did I just delete the assignment?
It's still online.
Way to go, Elise.
No bonus points for anyone. Maybe it's like, you're not a student.
You can access it if you go to your calendar.
Because you're not a student?
All right, so let me go.
And then click on the date. That's how I was able to access it.
But I think we're all gonna be late here. So.
No, it's the 20. It's
Eric, it
Let's
says.
do,
See what it says? It's due at midnight. No, that's the other one. Go to the 16th.
no, is it on the 16th?
That's the deadline.
No, that's when the second.
Yeah.
It's the 16th when I posted it.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Guys, I'm telling you, tomorrow it's not gonna be there. Number 2 in me is getting a little stressed out.
Yeah, for some reason it's not popping up in mine. The Enneagram.
Yeah, that I literally clicked on it and it opened up for me. Yeah, there you go.
So, all right. So based upon your personal evaluation, click on the link above for refresher, detail in a 300-word post how your Enneagram style has or will benefit you in your current role. Like I said, for example, I'm a 1 and literally walk around campus all day with a clipboard and my plan in hand because I oversee several areas and people. The 1 in me, it gives me structure that I can bounce around and I can refocus, where I'm not like And I need that. I mean, I need that clipboard. It's like kind of Linus with his blanket. But so if I was a 7, I couldn't possibly keep all the proverbial balls in the air. Like I couldn't continue these conversations because I'd be like, wait a minute. I'd be slowing everything down to try to get everything lined up to what works for me. So if you look at what's your Enneagram type, these are the 9 types. The reformer, that's, you know, principled, purposeful, self-controlled, reflective. The helper, although the helper couldn't get me the post, but anyway, not for nothing.
Oh, it's stressing me out.
The achiever, the individualist, the investigator, the loyalist, the enthusiast, the challenger, and the peacemaker. So you're just going to kind of go around and like, it's a fun exercise because you can say, even if somebody hasn't taken the Enneagram that you work with, you can say, I know that I work with a 9 because they just want to get along to go along. They don't want to have any trouble. They want to make sure everybody is like doing kumbaya in the break room, having a good time. So, but you also know that that person isn't really kind of looking to grow. They're not looking to challenge. They just want status quo. So, but what I'm saying is you can kind of identify your, you know, maybe your bizarro or your alter ego, the folks that, you know, you don't work well with or that you do work well with. And you like, I keep telling you a story. I work with a 7, she drives me crazy, but we work well together. So anyway, I'm going to try to put this right into our week 6 module when I put the recording on tonight. So I'll upload the recording and get this carried over as well. I'll change the dates on our, I'll change the citation requirements on our discussion board. There are no citation requirements on the discussion boards. Any questions? All right, well, if anybody is good to go, you can go. If you have questions, hang out. I'll be here uploading the presentation. So not see you next week. Let me know during the week, the presentation, if it's going to be online or on ground. And have a great week.
Eric, quick question. We are presenting next week, correct? Which is the 23rd.
23rd, showtime.
Okay.
I have called the local television stations, so they'll have a video crew in here to, I'm just kidding. 23rd, 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, pretty painless, 4 groups. Any other questions? All right, I'll update this stuff and we will see you guys next week. Have a great week.
Have a good night. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.